What if your food habits weren't about control or willpower at all, but safety, signals, and stories your body still holds on to? Today's guest, Jessica, is a renowned eating disorder specialist who's been on the front lines of treatment for over 25 years. She is the founder of the International Federation of Eating Disorder Dietitians, has fought and won for insurance coverage for patients, and is known for helping clients and professionals alike understand what's really driving eating behavior. Her mission is simple, but also radical. Take the shame out of the food conversation, decode what your inner eater is trying to say, and give you the tools to rewrite your food story without gaslighting, guilt, or guesswork. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast, the safe space where survival mode ends and your healing journey begins. So if you've been pushing through pain, fatigue, bloating, or hormonal chaos, I want you to know that your body isn't broken, it's speaking. But welcome to the Good Vibes Studio, Jessica.
Thank you. What a great way to start the day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So, Jessica, I love to start by grounding us in this concept you teach, the inner eater. What is it, and how does understanding it change how we really relate to food as well as ourselves?
Oh, it's so hard to try to be concise, but I will. The inner eater is the part of you that is making eating decisions for you without you knowing it. We all think we wake up and make choices about eating, but really there's so much unconscious stuff that we carry, not just from our past experiences with food, but our childhood and also the people who raised us. So intergenerational history is coming into our eating choices without us even realizing it. And so the goal is not to shame or blame or guilt anyone about it, simply to recognize it so that we can choose consciously if we want to keep on that path or if we want to change it. Because if you're not looking at your path and specifically actively trying to change it, you will passively continue on the same path, even if consciously you don't want to.
I like that last part. Even if consciously you don't want to. I think that's a big aspect that sometimes people don't realize. And that's normally where that guilt and that shame comes in. But I love that definition of inner eater, inner, right? And that's making eating decisions without you really knowing you're making.
And to tell you the truth, I don't like the idea of thinking that there's a part of me that is making decisions without my control or without my input. I do not like that thought. But I try to remember that, my lungs are breathing without my input. My heart is beating without my conscious input. So it's actually a good thing that there are things running in my body going on without my input. It's just that sometimes we need to look within and see if those things are going in the right direction, let's say. So if something was going on wrong with my breathing or my heartbeat, that would need to be looked into. And it's the same thing with eating. There's so much that can, for lack of a better word, in the moment, I'm thinking go wrong, but it's really not wrong. It's more like it's not congruent, let's say, with our goals or how we want to live our life. And so when something isn't congruent with that, then it's worth it to look at it.
Yeah, and I love that you said that. No shame, always, no shame. The look within to see if things are really going in the right direction. I think that's big because it makes me think about my own healing journey and where it really started and pivoted. And that was like being diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovarian syndrome, and then finding 2 small fibroids at the time of my surgery. And for me, it was like I had no idea what was going on inside of my body. Like it was the debilitating pain that about took me out while I was driving, nearly causing an accident. And for me, it was like something's not right. This pain is not normal. And on that investigation and in that journey, I chose surgery because I wanted to know what was going inside. So then I could put myself in a direction I felt better about. And that was, change. First for me, it was changing the way I was eating. And then it started the environment, boundaries and different things like that over time. The healing journey continued, but it continued with intention because I had more insight, more data about what was going on in the inside. But I think that what stood out to me was that analogy that you just gave. My lungs are breathing without input. My heart is beating without true input. I'm not telling my organs to function the way they're functioning every single day. They're doing it on
right,
their own.
to keep you alive and to protect you. And that's the key about our unconscious eating behaviors, is they're also trying to keep us alive and protect us. But the systems that they were made to keep us alive and protect us from may not be in our lives now. And so they may need some adjustment.
And I like that. And then sometimes it's like, how do you actually prepare people for that adjustment? So can you like break it down for the listeners about like who think this is what they might be thinking, but I'm the one putting food in my mouth. How is this really not in my control?
Right. So if I don't like the way I'm eating, then it's my fault. I don't have enough willpower or something like that. Right. So there's actually 4 major pathways that this takes. One is medical issues. So when you have a medical issue, and that can be, I'm ranging everything in there from depression to hypoglycemia to fibroids to menstrual cramps to celiac disease, food allergies. I mean, I'm putting everything in that category. When there's something with your body that is either uncomfortable or not normal, a concussion even, all of those things can change your eating behaviors, whether consciously or not. If it's a food allergy, you can't eat something or it will cause a problem. If it's a concussion, you might lose your appetite. There's all kinds of things that affect our eating that are medical, biological, happening in our bodies. 1/3 of people with depression and anxiety eat less. 2/3 of people with depression or anxiety eat more, right? So it's not necessarily that it affects everyone the same way, but there are effects. So that's one pathway. Addiction is another pathway that affects our eating without our conscious control. And that is a complicated kind of mashup. I'm not saying that people are addicted to food, but some people may feel that way, but also other addictions. People, let's say someone who has a problem with gambling might be in a casino all day long and never even eat, never even think about eating, right? Someone who's using excessive amounts of marijuana might have cyclical vomiting and be unable to stop vomiting. There's a lot of features of addiction that can impact eating. Then there is stress and trauma. And that is one of the things that I feel like Healing Your Inner Eater gets to a lot of times, because sometimes it's not even our own stress and trauma. It's the people who cared for us and raised us. So I'm thinking of anything from food insecurity as a child, and we're all raised by someone who had some food insecurity, right? Whether they went through a war situation, a refugee situation, incarceration. There's so many reasons, the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, all these reasons why people learn to have certain kind of hoarding behaviors, let's say with food, or you have to eat everything on your plate because there are children starving in China. I mean, all that kind of stuff is chronic stress. Institutional racism, all kinds of things are stressful, but there's also incidents. So I think of trauma as incidents, right? Things that can happen, and they can be food related or not food related. So if anyone listening watches Friends, I think about Chandler, who doesn't like Thanksgiving food because Thanksgiving was when his parents told him they were getting a divorce. So there's a specific food related incident. For him, it's not unconscious. He's very aware that that's happening. But there are other things that are not related to food that are stressful or traumatic events that change our brain chemistry. And what we don't think about is that food is a mood altering chemical. And it's the first one that most kids can get their hands on. And so stress saps out your good brain chemistry, and eating or not eating or over exercising or throwing up or other food related behaviors change it back. And so stress and traumatic events are very significant undercurrents that are driving people's eating. But the temptation is to say it happened so long ago that can't be affecting me anymore. And we can talk in depth about why that's not the case and how to change it. The fourth category is learned behavior. So we're all swimming in this ocean of very appearance conscious, food conscious, consumer conscious culture. And so there are so many messages coming at us all the time. We think we woke up in the morning to pick what we were going to eat, but the truth is we are limited by the things that were available in our store, the amount of money we have, how much groceries cost. Do we have a refrigerator to keep food cold in? Do we have pests that are eating things in the cupboard, right? Do we have a roommate who eats our food without asking, right? There's so many environmental things that are impacting us that we just don't think about because they're so big that we can't even imagine unless we actually hear about something like there aren't going to be any avocados this year because there was a drought somewhere, right? But other than that, we just think about it as food is our choice. And really, you know, if you live in an area that doesn't have a grocery store and you're mostly buying your food from a convenience store, it's not your choice completely. You think of it as these are my choices and I'm making a choice. And yes, you are making a choice, but you're not making a choice from all the food. You're making a choice from what someone has already decided will be your choices.
I love that breakdown.
You're so positive. I love that. I feel very smart talking to you.
Because you're doing the doggone. I'm learning a lot. I'm taking the notes. So those 4 major pathways that can change your eating: 1, medical issues; 2, addiction; 3, stress and trauma; and 4, learned behaviors. And I really like the in-depthness you provided with giving us examples and what this really looks like, because it gives someone to be like, oh, I need to give myself grace. Oh, I'm now aware of what's happening. So I don't feel like it's something outside of me or just me failing at this thing called life.
Oh my gosh, yes. And there's definitely more. You can have more than one path, right? You can be on more than one path. If you have a medical issue, then you could have a learned behavior of, I get scared when I go to someone else's house because I don't know what's in the food, let's say. And that can develop into a social phobia, right? So there's ways that these interact for sure. So you don't have to try to fit yourself into one category. It's more like think about which aspect of each category might be impacting you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Jessica. So welcome to your first step towards reclaiming your rhythm. Y'all, this plant-based alternative guide isn't just a recipe book. It's a lifestyle awareness tool. If you've ever wondered why bloating, fatigue, cravings keep coming back when you're eating healthy, this guide will show you what your body's been trying to tell you. So instead of you thinking I'm doing the right thing, you're also getting nutritional benefits of certain grains, fruits, vegetables, as well as recipes. So clean swaps for common inflammatory triggers, nourishing, juicing, and smoothie recipes that help restore balance, and then simple, satisfying meals aligned with your healing, because you don't need more restriction. You need real restoration. Now, let's get back into the conversation with Jessica. And if you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe to the Empowered Place, Empowered Lives podcast on YouTube. And if you listen on your favorite podcast distribution platform, make sure you follow the show and give it a rating. So, Jessica, this has been very enlightening already, and I hope people are really getting a lot from this conversation. But you've said food can be a protector or even a placeholder for something else. How can listeners tell a difference, whether it's a placeholder or a protector?
One really easy way is how you feel after you eat. If you feel hungry before you eat, and after you eat, you feel content, grateful, happy, then most likely you were using food for the purpose of food. If you feel disgruntled, disappointed, angry, sad, jealous, mean, afraid after you eat, it's entirely possible that you were feeling those things before you ate, and that's what drove you to food. It's so tempting to think, I was fine before I ate that pizza, let's say, and now I'm just really angry with myself for eating it. Well, guess what? Pizza can't make you angry. Someone else might eat a pizza and say, that was delicious, I feel strong. So if you're feeling angry with yourself because you ate the pizza, there's a very good chance that you were angry with yourself before you ate the pizza, because why would a happy, content person eat something that they know is going to make them feel bad? So it's a clue to figuring out what the issue is. Now, let me tell you something that's going to sound like made up, but you can test it in your own life. It's the idea that when we have certain feelings that we don't know what to do with, we need an explanation. So let's take this out of food for a minute and let's talk about marriage. Okay. If I'm in a grouchy mood and there's nothing actually wrong, right? There's lots of things that are a mess in the world. But if I'm looking in my immediate environment and nothing's actually wrong, I have a safe house, I have everything I need, let's say, I hope, healthy family, and I'm in a bad mood, and I look around my house and the only other person is my husband, there is a 100% chance that I am going to find something that I am pissed at my husband about, to either pick a fight or to tell myself in my head, like, I don't deserve to be treated like that, right? It's like I'm already grouchy and I need a target. So now let's flip it to food. There's so many things that are so screwed up in the world right now. There are so many things on our minds. If we can't figure out what the problem is, then we find something unconsciously to blame. And here's why. Because, and I want to say more fun, although I guess I'll say more fun, but maybe more productive. It feels more productive to have something to blame than just to accept that we feel crappy. It feels more productive to have something to blame than to say, oh, maybe I have to do some hard inner work to solve this problem, or some marriage counseling, right? It's so much easier to find something to blame. The problem is my husband bites his nails really loud. I can't stand it. It's like so easy to find a thing. And we do that with food because unconsciously we'd rather live in a world where if I never eat pizza again, then I never have to feel this feeling again. Instead of sometimes you just feel crummy and there's nothing you can do about it. That feels powerless and nobody likes that. So our brain is trying to, that was your original question, is how are these behaviors trying to protect us? That's how. They're trying to give us something to say, if you don't do that again, then you won't have to feel this way again. And it's not true.
I like it. And I really like that breakdown. And for me, it's like really understanding the protector or placeholder when it comes to food is really going down to how do I feel after I eat it versus am I blaming something or shaming or is there guilt?
It's a very much a curiosity. The tool, the skill is curiosity. That's interesting. I wonder why I'm feeling so angry. Let me think back. How was I feeling before the pizza? What else in my day or my life could I be angry about? You could find a lot of things, I'm sure. But the key is that none of those things can pizza fix. So it's not wrong to eat pizza. Right. It's just that you're disappointed in the pizza when it doesn't solve the problem because the problem wasn't hunger.
Yeah. And I like it because when you brought it up, and I'm such a foodie, so I rarely, I don't think that I feel so really bad after I eat something. Like I really love food. And I think, and food experiences, I should say that. I really love good food experiences. And when you were talking about the pizza, I was thinking, oh, like since I've been plant-based, I found some really good pizza experiences, like, butternut squash pizza from True Foods, the caramelized onions. And I'm thinking like, I would have never thought about like a cashew ricotta or, eating butternut squash as a part of a pizza. And this is really good pizza. Like it actually trumps my pan pizza from Pizza Hut, when I used to read the books and do book it and get my personalized pizza. Like this tastes better than what I used to get when I thought it was best, and it's that elevated food experience to something different. It's like, but now I'm getting the benefits of, onions and spinach and butternut squash and cashews. And it's like this nutritional powerhouse in the form of pizza, and it tastes good and it feels good to eat it. And I just get so excited about it. So I think being able to understand the curiosity of the feelings you get after you eat something might just be those feelings that are resonating for you that you're now aware of. And it really wasn't the food that happened. And so I'm really grateful that you told us, like breaking up that and making us think differently about those feelings in order for us to kind of decipher what's really going on.
Well, and a lot of feelings feel empty, like hunger, right? Boredom, loneliness, sadness, all those things can feel empty. And there's nothing wrong. There's no judgment about eating when you're having feelings. That's just part of life. The problem is, are you getting your feelings addressed? So typical example is eating ice cream after a breakup. Okay, we've seen that in every rom-com, every sitcom, every show, right? Eating ice cream out of the container after a breakup. No big deal. The problem is if 9 years later, you're still eating ice cream out of the container because of the breakup, it's not just the ice cream. The ice cream isn't the problem. The ice cream is the symptom that there's some grief and loss there that never got addressed. And so it's not wrong to eat ice cream after a breakup. That doesn't hurt anybody. The issue is that what else are you doing to actually manage your feelings? Because ice cream isn't going to solve those feelings, big picture.
And the big word that you said was symptoms. Symptoms, signals, messages. That's just your body's way of speaking to you. But it's just like you said, you got to get to the root of that thing. It goes past just the feelings. But I love, are you getting your feelings addressed? That is the question. If you're still vibing with us in this episode, I want you to make sure you drop that question, because that is a good reflective question. You don't have to answer it, but just drop that reflective question in the comments. Are you getting your feelings addressed? So
Well,
go ahead.
Oh, and when we think about our history, the intergenerational history, our parents and grandparents, they were definitely not getting their feelings addressed. They either smoked their feelings away or drank their feelings away or worked their feelings away. They were told they weren't supposed to have any feelings. So we are maybe the first generation that sometimes has the luxury of actually thinking about this stuff and considering our feelings to be important. So if you weren't raised to think about your feelings and consider your feelings, you are not alone.
You better let them know. I like it, Jessica. Thank you. And I put it down. People aren't always addressing their feelings, know how to address their feelings. That's why I think it's so important. It was another conversation I was having with another guest. It's so important to figure out how to truly break down a barrier or a wall to reach someone, because you just don't know their makeup. You just don't know their personality. You just don't know why some walls are up. And how to really reach them. And it's not always through talking. And so I really love that context that you're putting around the person who are having the feelings, and understanding that you might not have given yourself permission before, but you get your permission today to be able to truly address those feelings.
Yes. And it's interesting that while you're talking, I'm thinking about being a dietitian, and the fact that I think a lot of people think I'm going to be judging what they eat if they eat with me, but the opposite is true, because as a dietitian, I know all the factors that go into someone's choices. And I know that I don't know what they had to eat earlier today, or what their plans are later today, or how active they've been, or what their medical conditions are. I'm purposefully not judging people based on what they're eating. And if I catch my brain doing that, I just reframe it and just say, it's none of my business. I don't have that information. It's interesting that people think that it's the opposite, that I'm going to be like, this is what you should be eating, when actually I'm much more aware maybe than the average person, that I have no idea what you should be eating if I didn't ask you 100 questions to find out.
100 questions. Yes, ma'am.
Well, one of my pet peeves is when doctors tell people to change their eating. And I always think, if you didn't do a nutrition assessment, you should not be giving nutrition advice.
And I hate when they say that too, because you don't know if someone has already changed the way they were eating before they got here, and you didn't even ask them about what their eating looks like to even know if it was more than just the eating or something else, because there's such a holistic approach that comes to your health, your well-being, and how the body functions. And so I agree with you. So there's this story that you shared about a client in a carpool line who kept leaving to grab food, even knowing she'll be late. What does a moment like that actually tell us about what's really going on inside?
Well, for that individual that you're referring to, we talked about that when we met earlier. I was meeting with an individual, a woman who was referred to me because she had some weight gain. And when we talked about why, it was she had these compulsions to eat. And she was describing, just as an example, being in the carpool line to pick up her kids and feeling like, I have to get something to eat, knowing that she'd be pulling out of the carpool line and she'd end up late to pick up her kids, which was not her value. And so we talked some more. I did a further assessment. Everything did not sound quite right. And when I asked her to go to a specific doctor, an endocrinologist, and later I found out that she had a tumor that was causing these feelings. It was also causing heavy sweating and heavy menstrual flow. And it had nothing to do with her willpower. She was thinking, here I am, a bad parent. Here I am, a person with no control. And it turned out she had a medical condition, and this was the main symptom. She hadn't gotten the other things addressed because, as you sort of alluded to before, we women think like, oh, this is just part of how my life is. This is just pain that I have to live with. And it was only until she gained weight that a medical provider said, oh, you need to do something about this weight. And then we kind of had to dig down and figure out that it was something completely different.
I absolutely love that. And I think that's why it's so important that so many people seek out support from people who have the time, passion, and expertise to truly help guide you to getting to the root cause of what's really happening and allowing you to go see the right person to get more insight on what's actually going on. Because that could have easily just been her thinking, like you said, I'm just a bad parent. I just got to go eat. And like you said, it was, I don't know if anybody caught it. You said that's not her value. And so sometimes when you really know who you are, what you value, what your beliefs are, people can understand that, well, something else might be going on. Let's do a little bit more of an investigative work, a little bit more exploration to figuring out what it truly is. And I think, Jessica, being in a culture where people want quick fixes and they want to see results immediately, and they feel like all they need to do is find one person, when it should be a comprehensive, collaborative effort from so many different, entities that you may need input from to get true data of what's happening before you can figure out what that protocol to move forward. I think we need to be reminded that it's a journey, and it's a journey filled with intention, and that you need to give yourself grace, patience, and love as you start figuring out what's really going on, as well as the confidence, the courage, and the safety to do so. And I think we don't hear enough about that, where people always thinks that it has to be like this hustle, or it has to be this quick fix. So can you kind of give us a little insight on how you actually work with clients to uncover like the logic behind their food patterns?
Sure. And I want to add something to your list of kind of learned behaviors that are not serving us well, which is sort of being trusting of authority, or feeling like we can't question authority. And I feel like our medical providers fit into that category of authority. And I forget what I wanted to talk about when I get to the doctor. I feel later, I'm like, oh man, I wanted to ask about, it's like we have white coat amnesia, or we feel like we can't stick up for ourselves. It's very bred into us. I think it feels like going to the principal's office instead of being a conversation with our medical provider. It feels like we're going to be scolded. And so I think that's one thing to keep in mind, is that you are entitled to say things like, I don't want to be weighed at this appointment. Can you please tell me why that's important to my medical care? Because it just flusters me, and then I can't think clearly about anything else. Or I'm working on my weight in my own way, so I'd really like to talk about my strep throat or whatever, and not be yelled at about my weight. Otherwise, I'm going to have to find another doctor. I mean, it's so hard to say things like that. Ugh.
It is. But something that you said, when you said it's like going to the principal office, I feel like depending on where you are, how you grew up, what your family was like, it was as if we gave this precedence to doctors, to whatever they say. I'm just going to do whatever they say because they told me to do this, when you should be able to know yourself a little bit better. And if you're not in that office, almost to the point where they can barely get a word in, because you're telling them so much about your experiences, what life looks like to you, what it feels like, the different examples of what you're going through and how it shapes your quality of life. Like, if you're not in there spilling all of that, they don't know enough about you to truly give you enough insight to tell you what you really should be doing. They might just be following a set protocol based on just one symptom or two symptoms you might have said, but not giving enough context around that. So I truly believe that while I do cherish and value medical professionals, I do believe that you need to be able to make sure they truly know you, hear you, and understand what you're going through to properly guide you through something, or guide you to the next step, or give you options for the next step based on what your decision is. Because I hate when I hear people who say, oh, well, the doctor told me this, or the doctor said that, and then they're just going through medication type protocols when there's no lifestyle changes or habits or disruption, or just account for it, asking investigative work just to see what other ways are possible to help treat and meet people where they are. So
Oh my gosh, you're so speaking my language, because I'm thinking of when my husband went to see a new doctor, and when the doctor called with his blood work, I was on speakerphone and I heard the doctor say, well, your cholesterol's high, so you need to eat less meat and eat more vegetables. And I piped in and I said, I'm his wife. I'm a dietitian. His vegetables and his meat are just fine and they're not going to change. So if he has high cholesterol, he needs medicine. Like, you didn't ask him anything about his eating. You don't know that his wife is a dietitian. Like, why would you just say out of the clear blue sky, eat less meat and eat more vegetables when you have no idea what this person eats?
And you don't even know the type of choices they are. Because I've also had conversations, Jessica, with certain people who say, based on certain levels of testing, functional testing, holistic testing, labs, panels that kind of go beyond just what our traditional medical system here in the U.S. goes through. Like, it starts getting to a point where it can tell you the types of fruits, vegetables, things that better respond to your body, versus just saying any fruits, any vegetables. Because there are some people who are allergic to certain vegetables or fruits or meats, and they don't even know it. They just be like, oh, I just had this, this slab of ribs, and all of a sudden I'm always so tired, or I always feel so drained, not knowing that they might actually be allergic to ribs, And so I'm glad that you spoke about that. I'm glad that your husband had you, because there are so many people that get this information from the doctor, and what the doctor says is just law. And there's nobody else that can help them better understand what the doctor is trying to say and have a different relationship with you that can help you see that there's other things you can do and try to see what the other results can be.
Especially with kids. I'm thinking of someone when I gave a talk once, and the mom said, I took my kid to the doctor and the doctor said they're getting kind of chubby. They shouldn't have anything white. And now the child won't drink milk. So is that kind of thing where people are just spouting bad nutrition advice and not checking to see how it's received by the other person, especially kids. And that's how a lot of eating problems are formed. So your original question was, how do I work with people? So I don't actually have an individual patient caseload anymore, but I teach this workshop, Healing Your Inner Eater. And one of the first exercises is we have a circle on the page where you write your own name. And then we have circles on the outside where each individual writes the people that impacted them growing up. It doesn't necessarily have to be your parents. It doesn't have to be the people that were in your home, but people who were very significant to you growing up. And then you write about their life experience and their eating habits, what you remember about them. And then we look at it in a group and talk about how we think that those people's experience may have trickled down to us. And it's so interesting, the things that start to come out, because when we look beyond our own experience, suddenly a lot of things start to make sense. And I'm just thinking of kind of a simple example that isn't necessarily a dysfunctional example, but just the idea of how we've sort of carried things down. My Uncle Stanley fought in World War II in some area, I'm going to say the wrong thing, maybe Italy or North Africa, where there was a drought. There wasn't enough water. And he always had a glass of water by his bed before he went to sleep, right? That's not hurting anybody. But for whatever reason, he felt more safe when he had that. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking of a story I heard of Angela Merkel. I think that's how you say her name, the ex-chancellor of Germany, that she doesn't ever leave her house without bread. Even if she isn't going to eat it, she always has to have bread in the house, because she remembers bread lines from in East Germany when she was a kid. And sometimes you would get to the front of the line and there wasn't any bread after waiting all day for bread. And these are the things that affect people, and we know it, but we forget to ask, how do these things affect the people that are being raised or in the family environment of these people? And so sometimes you are doing something that made perfect sense for someone else and doesn't make sense for you. And this is a pretend story, not one that I actually ever heard, just a story about a new bride who goes to Thanksgiving at her husband's house, and they the ham is cut into 2 pieces and served in 2 pans. And she says, why do you do that? Why did your mom cut the end off the ham? And he says, I don't know, ask her. So they ask the mom, why do you cut the end off the ham? And she says, I don't know, Granny always does it, ask her. And Granny says, I don't know, great Granny always did it, so ask her. So they asked the great Granny, why do you cut the end off the ham? And she said, it was the Great Depression and we only had 1 pan and a whole ham wouldn't fit in the pan, so we cut off the end and cooked it in another pan, like that. And it's like, so people transmit this stuff down generations, not remembering why they do it anymore, but we can get really attached to that. In that case, it's not hurting anybody, right? But there are other things that do hurt us. If you say, for example, everyone can only have 1 cookie or something like that, then that's fine if you only want 1 cookie. But if you find yourself later in the cupboard, like with the light off, hiding in the pantry, eating a box of cookies, then somehow that 1 cookie rule is not serving you anymore. It's not meeting you where you are. It's not congruent with your values as they are now.
Not serving you anymore, not congruent with your values. I think that's big. And I love the examples that you gave with the water cup, and that's a form of safety, with the bread because of the bread lines, and just realizing that through generations, that became the why, and the why became the norm. And then realizing that the norm isn't normal. It's that disruption. You know what I mean? It's that disruption in the pattern of your thinking, your beliefs, your feelings, the values, but it takes time. And I love the exercise that you do in your workshop by really identifying people of influence or people of impact from childhood to now, and then looking at their life, looking at their eating habits, and seeing how or if they may have been impacting you. Yes. And where you've got
even before you were born, even before the time that they would be raising you. And I'm thinking of a participant in one of my workshops who shared that her grandmother used to always cry at big family meals. And when she was a kid, she thought her grandma was sad because you associate crying with sad. As an adult, she found out that her grandma grew up in the Dust Bowl, and every Sunday her family would invite the minister over for lunch after church, and there wasn't enough food, but they didn't want to tell the minister that. So the minister could eat as much as he wanted while the children were not allowed to eat anything. And after the minister left, if there was anything left over from the adults eating, then the children could eat. And that's how the grandma grew up. So here's the grandma, however many years later, sitting at a big family meal where there's enough for everyone to eat together. And it's tears of joy that she's having. So it didn't necessarily impact this person in a negative way, but it's just identifying that and being able to say, wow, information, because in some cases it does impact people in a negative way. And you have to see it to be able to then make the choice of, I want to keep cutting the ham, or I want to feel happy at meals, or whatever the case may be, instead of I just do it because I think I'm supposed to, or because that's the only way.
I like that, because you think it's the only way. That was powerful. And I love the tears of joy and how someone might see a reaction and think it's one thing, but then again, doing that investigative work, asking those questions, digging a little deeper, trying to get closer to the root, being able to discover a whole new aspect and perspective.
Oh, I have a great story to tell you that I just thought of. This was one of my first patients when I worked in a children's hospital. I was asked to come consult with this little boy and his parents, and they said he was a really picky eater. And this is something I hear all the time. And so I'm thinking, they say he only eats 5 things. And so I'm like writing. I'm like, okay, what are the 5 things? Well, I keep writing. There's so many more than 5 things. This is not a picky eater. I've seen malnourished children. This is not a malnourished child. This is a very healthy, adorable looking 5-year-old, 6-year-old. And I said, I feel some kind of disconnection here between what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. And can you help me understand what is the real problem here? And they said, well, the real biggest problem is that every day around 2:00, he starts saying, what am I going to have to eat for dinner? What am I going to have to eat for dinner? What am I going to have to eat for dinner? And I said, what is that about? And they said, well, we always make him try new things at dinner. And I said, can you help me understand why you do that? And they said, well, the dad has a sister. So this little boy's aunt, we have this aunt, and she only eats ham and cheese sandwiches. She brings ham and cheese sandwiches to Thanksgiving. She only eats ham and cheese sandwiches. It really impairs her social life. And we don't want our son to turn out like that. And I said, okay, here's the thing. Your son is 6 years old. He will experience food in many different ways, but the way he's experiencing it right now is with anxiety. He is stressing out in the afternoon about what you're going to make him eat in the evening. This is making anything that happens at that dinner table very stressful. So I'd like you and him to hear me say that he should not be forced to eat anything anymore. You can put out all kinds of things and he can either eat it or not because he's doing fine. And I'd also wonder if anyone would be willing to ask that aunt or anyone in the family a little bit more about her story and see if you can figure that out. Well, I never saw them again because during that week, just a few days later, the mom called and she said, something happened today that never happened before. We were at the grocery store and my little boy said, can we try those popsicles? And she said, he's never asked to try a new food before. We took it home. He tried it. He didn't like it, but I don't care because he tried something on his own. That was amazing. She said, also, I went and asked my mother-in-law about my aunt and why she's like that. Why does she only eat ham and cheese sandwiches everywhere she goes? And my mother-in-law said, we really messed up. When she was little, she was a picky eater, and we took her to the doctor, and the pediatrician said the only way she's going to eat more foods is if you force her to eat everything. And we forced her to eat other foods. And now that she's an adult, she says, no one's going to ever force me to eat anything again. So in fact, they were thinking that this aunt eats only what she wants because nobody ever made her eat other foods. And it turns out it's the exact opposite. So here they are basically reliving the same pattern with their child because of their mistaken beliefs about someone else.
You better go in there and disrupt it, Jessica, by getting to the root and asking for the story. And the story matters. The story matters, especially when you give someone the opportunity. And again, you gave that 5 or 6 year old boy the permission to go out there and choose. And you allowed him to not allow eating to be so stressful. And I'm wondering if that's a place for someone to consider, reflect upon, the picky eaters that they are around. How do you really get them to speak about or express in their own way their own story on why they are that picky eater? Because if you were listening from the beginning and you still vibing with us, drop the word pathways in the comments, because one of the pathways was stress. And you just talked about that stress and anxiety that 5 or 6 year old boy was having just on the thought of what was going to be for dinner. And it wasn't that he didn't think he was going to have anything for dinner. It was what they were going to put in front of him and make him eat for dinner. So I thank you for that, Jessica. And you're really showing us through the stories and the experiences and the expertise that you've really been working in this field for a while. What role does shame play in how people experience eating challenges, and how does it hold them back from the real healing that they deserve?
Shame is a killer, because things that you're ashamed of, you don't want to talk about. And talking about things is the only way to get another person's point of view. Otherwise, it just lives in your head. And, I didn't create this saying, but I love it. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. Mm-hmm. So if you're the only person who knows about a certain eating behavior you have, you can't get anyone else's point of view on it. And so it's really, really challenging. I don't even know if it's impossible. I won't say impossible, but it's really challenging to get insight on your own behavior if you can't share it with someone. So let me give you an example. When I was working in an office with another dietitian, I remember it was about 5 o'clock and I realized I hadn't eaten anything since breakfast. I was feeling a little bit lightheaded, and my instant thought was, oh my gosh, I'm a terrible dietitian. I haven't eaten all day. And I've learned through my work and people telling me things that they're ashamed of and realizing, well, that's really nothing to be ashamed of. I learned to do the same thing to myself. And I thought, okay, it's okay. You don't have to be ashamed. And I went to the other dietitian, Laura, and I said, Laura, I'm feeling kind of woozy and like a terrible dietitian. I haven't eaten anything since breakfast. I don't feel right. And she said, okay, sit down right here. And she pulled a nutrition supplement a shake out of her little refrigerator in her office. She said, here, drink this and just sit here with me for a few minutes and chat, and then we'll figure out what you're going to do for dinner. And it was so comforting to be able to bring my shameful experience to her. And she didn't hear it as shameful at all. And that's what I think I've learned so much about hearing so many people talk about their eating, is the things that each of us is ashamed about. No one else is embarrassed for us about it, right? It's like, oh, I had a patient once who told me that she had decided to eat in a completely vegan manner. And when I asked her why, she said, well, there was this one time that someone served me chicken on the bone and I didn't like the way it looked. So I just said I'm vegan. And so now I have to be vegan for the rest of my life because she couldn't just say no, thank you. Or right. And I thought, oh my gosh, after years of sitting here listening to the things that people are ashamed of and realizing this is nothing to be ashamed of, it occurred to me maybe the things I'm ashamed of aren't worth being ashamed of either. Right. So shame is a real problem. And I think that what it really masks is a lot of confusion, powerlessness, feelings that we don't know what to do with. We sort of smush into this big bundle called I'm not good enough. And that's really what shame is. And my antidote for that is regret. Because let's talk about this. Let's just use my example. If I said, I'm so ashamed, I haven't eaten anything all day, I'm a terrible dietitian, no one can know this, then I can't get help. But if instead I can say to myself, I regret that I haven't eaten anything all day, that's not about me as a person. That's just a choice I made, and I regret that choice, and I'd like to do it differently next time, and I'll plan ahead better. But right now, I need some help figuring out what to do next. And regret is the antidote to shame, because it's not saying, I'm happy I did all these things. I regret it. But it opens the door to getting help. It opens the door to doing it differently next time, rather than I'm just a screw up. I always mess things up. I always do this. And then you don't want to tell anyone because then they'll know you're a screw up too.
I love that you said shame is a killer. And I'm so grateful that you gave the antidote as it being regret and saying that it truly opens the door to something else. But the powerful thing is, it's almost as if you gave an affirmation when you spoke on it being a regret. I regret that I didn't eat anything today. It didn't say I am a horrible dietitian because I don't practice what I preach. I failed today in what I give to other people. And it's so much more power in the shift that you gave to the narrative of the act. And I think that was powerful. And so I hope someone got that as well, or if that was a message to them to help them understand that a shift is possible, and to not own and give power to the thing that you really don't want to identify.
But it means being vulnerable, and that's really hard. So you have to kind of start with a safe place.
There we go. I was going to say that being able to be vulnerable was always safe.
As they say, don't go to the hardware store and ask for milk. If there's kind of a bully in your family, they're not the person you go to when you want to be vulnerable. You kind of have to know who you're going to.
You do. And sometimes that too, because maybe the person you did go to before made you feel the shame or poured in and kind of added to the feelings of the shame versus being able to help you shift or pivot that thought process, that feeling, that belief that you have for yourself. And so I like that you spoke on that. So let's talk about, for someone who might be stuck in the loop of guilt or impulse or confusion around food, what's the first step in healing their inner eater?
Well, I would suggest either writing or talking into your phone, something like that, where if you're not ready to be vulnerable with a therapist or a dietitian or a best friend, at least start getting it out on paper or in a notes app or in an email to yourself, something where you can start to sort of get the thoughts out of your head. Because when you look at things on paper, you have a couple of benefits. One is, of course, you can share it with someone else. But even if you don't, you can still kind of look at things a little more objectively, like as if it's someone else's words. Like, what would I say if this was my friend telling me these things? You can kind of see it. You can also sometimes see patterns. And you can also look back later and see, oh my gosh, I was feeling so stressed out when I wrote this. And now look, I'm not as stressed out. So maybe next time I feel stressed out, I'll remind myself, you know what, you always feel like this after you XYZ. But it's going to, I have to do that when I give talks all the time. I'm so stressed out. And it was only when I started writing down my panic before I give a talk that I could then look back and say, oh my God, I always feel panicked before I give a talk and I always feel great afterwards. So next time I panic, I'll remind myself, it's okay. This is what you do every time, right? So there's a lot of benefits to writing things down. And I'll give an example of a patient I had once who she said she would write things down and she never did. And I was like, don't write things down. Don't tell me you're going to do it and not do it. Just stop it. And we came up with the idea that she would just talk into her phone and make little recordings. So one day in our session, she said, I want to play you this series of recordings. So the first one said, I'm on my way to the Cheesecake Factory. I'm going to get their salmon and a piece of chocolate cake. That's what I really want. And you told me I should think about what I really want to eat. And if I can get it, then I should go get it. So I'm driving to Cheesecake Factory. That's what I'm getting. The next message, just a second later, right? She's still in the car. She said, okay, so let's face it. I really only want the chocolate cake. I do not want the salmon. The salmon was just an excuse to go and get the chocolate cake. But if I don't really want the salmon, I just want the chocolate cake, I think you would tell me, just go get the cake. If that's what you want, go get the cake. So I'm going to Cheesecake Factory to get the cake. Okay, next message. So I've been thinking, like you told me, what is it about cake? Why do I like cake? Why chocolate cake? Why am I thinking about chocolate cake? And I realized that I saw some videos on Snapchat of my friends in another state that I used to live with, and they're celebrating someone's birthday. And I saw this big chocolate cake and it just sounded good. So I'm going to get chocolate cake. But do you see the progression that she's now not tricking herself? She's just being very honest. I saw chocolate cake. I want chocolate cake. I'm going to eat chocolate cake. She's not telling herself she's hungry. She's not telling herself she's going to go get salmon that she doesn't really want, and the chocolate cake will just be the extra, right? She's being very honest. And the last message that she had recorded said, I realized that it's not chocolate cake that I want. What I want is to be with my friends. I'm feeling sad and lonely and missing my friends. And so I'm turning around and I'm going home and I'm going to call one of my friends and have a good talk. That is the goal of what we're trying to get to. And you have to get it out of your head to be able to get to that place. That's very evolved. I mean, to be able to get to that point where you can say, I don't actually even want food. This isn't about food at all. This is about needing some companionship. But that empty feeling, my initial instinct is to go get food, to fill it. But that's the goal.
That is. And I love that you didn't have to respond to that. It was just the messages that she was having herself to evolve the thinking, and being able to have the skills that you taught her allowed her to continue to go deeper with honesty and integrity on what's actually happening. And I never really heard any true restrictions at all. It was just like, I'm revealing myself. Every layer I go deeper, I'm understanding what I really need. And I think that's what everyone deserves, the opportunity to give themselves permission to go deeper, every layer at a time, just to get to where you really feel like you've identified what it is that you truly need, so you can actually go get it.
And it's that curiosity, just being curious, not being ashamed, not judging yourself, just thinking, that's interesting. I wonder why chocolate cake is in my head right now. Why all of a sudden am I thinking about chocolate cake?
I like it. What do you feel like safety truly is around food? What does that look like in real life for someone?
I'm going to say I think it's different for different people, because just I can use myself as an example. Since perimenopause, I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm hungry. And if there's certain things in the house, I might eat 2 or 3 of them, and I don't really feel good about it after. And so for me, safety means just not buying them, like being tempted at the store and just thinking, you know what, it's better for me to not have that in my house. It's not a restriction. No one's telling me to do it. It has nothing to do with weight. It's just, I don't like the way I feel after I eat that. And I guess in the middle of the night, it's kind of a craving I'm having. So if I wake up in the middle of the night I can get something to eat. That's no problem. But I don't want to unconsciously eat something that makes me not feel good. So that's safety to me. To someone else, safety might be having a lot of that food in the house so that they never feel like they're restricted, and they may not even eat it. But they just need to know it's there so that they know I'm a grown up. I can have what I want to eat. So I really think that safety is different for different people. I think one thing that everyone needs to feel safe, or I wish everyone had, is other people not judging their eating. And I think the world would be a better place if we all stopped commenting on what other people are eating, even strangers, right? If you see someone of a certain size and you say, well, they really should not be eating that, everyone around you hears that, right? And knows that you're judging what they're eating. It's really not okay. And we need to be a lot more compassionate about what other people are eating, or just totally neutral. Just not notice. It's not your problem. And I think that feeling safe around food is really diminished when we think someone's watching us and judging us.
Yeah. I like to say minding my mindful business.
Yeah. Yes. And then the last thing is, of course, adequate food. I mean, if you don't have enough food, if you can't afford food, if you don't have anywhere to store food that's safe, then how can you feel safe around food if you're not sure when you're going to be able to eat? I mean, that is just tragic. That, and back when my parents were saying there's children starving in China, you have to eat all your food. We didn't have to go to China to find kids who didn't have enough to eat. We could have looked around our own neighborhood probably. And I feel like that's just, in 2025, it's just an absolute tragedy that there are any children anywhere that don't have enough to eat, or adults.
I agree. Can you share a practice or question someone can try this week to get curious instead of critical?
Yeah. The words to use are just simply, that's interesting. Whenever you hear something happening in your head, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ate that much, or oh my gosh, I skipped lunch, that was crazy, or boy, I really want a piece of apple pie. That's interesting. I wonder what that's about. Just see where the thought leads you, maybe nowhere, but just start the process of practicing asking yourself that question, because every once in a while you will get an answer. And I'll share a personal experience with you that blew my mind. Okay. It was my first excursion to the grocery store when I was a single girl with my first job and my first paycheck, and I could buy whatever I want at the grocery store. And I had this idea that I really wanted this giant Mr. Good bar, like this really big Mr. Good bar. And I didn't even really want to eat it. I just was like, that's so cool. I just really want it. I can't explain why. But first paycheck, I can get whatever I want. And I got that Mr. Good bar, brought it home. It was only when I was unpacking the groceries that I realized that day was May 19th. That's my dad's birthday. My dad died when I was 12. The only candy I ever saw my dad eat, his favorite candy, was a Mr. Good bar. And it was this message from my unconscious connecting me with my dad. How weird is that? I was like, did that really happen? Because how do you explain that? Right? But that's how our unconscious works, unconsciously. And so if we just ask ourselves, that's interesting, instead of like, you don't need that giant Mr. Good bar, Jessica, or that doesn't even make any sense. Just the question, that's interesting. I wonder what that's about. Whether I bought it or not doesn't matter. It's the idea of, I wonder why I'm craving a Mr. Good bar today. And actually, I don't even want to eat it. I wonder what that's about, right? That's the question. Just be curious about your own behavior, not in a judgmental way, and just see what bubbles up. Because once we feel like we're being judged, it really smushes any ability to be creative or curious. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
I love it. Thank you for sharing that story. And it kind of brings it back full circle to where we even started thinking about conscious and unconscious behaviors when it comes to eating. All right. So this is now the Vitality Sparks round. All right. So make sure that
I'm not ready. I'm not prepared.
You are. You are. All right. So it's like lightning round. Keep it short, keep it ready, keep it quick. All right. But keep it high vibrational. Here we go. One thing you wish everyone understood about food and emotions.
Oh, that emotions are a roller coaster, but it's a problem when your food is on the roller coaster.
Oh, that was a good one. All right. What's a belief about eating that you once held but no longer do?
Oh my gosh, so many. I used to think that if you ate more than you planned to, that you had to exercise it off.
Okay. Most underrated part of healing, the inner eater.
Oh, freedom, feeling good about yourself, being able to like yourself.
I like it. One food memory that brings you joy.
Oh, teaching my niece, Edie, to squeeze her grapefruit like this after you eat all the sections with a spoon. Squeeze it like this and get the juice in your spoon, because that's the way my dad did it. So even though my dad died long before she was ever born, she would say, I'm going to do it like Grandpa Abe. And it made me feel like I had connected her with him, even though he died many years before she was ever born.
Yes, ma'am. And then what would you say to someone who feels hopeless around food right now?
I'm just having feelings for that person, because I actually remember what that felt like. And I would say two things. One is either talk to someone, find an online group, write it down, just get your feelings out of your head a little bit, just so you can start the process of recognizing it's not just you, that these are problems that many, many, many people struggle with. And then the other thing I would say is, we don't know the truth about the future. Like, no one can predict the future. So if it's equally possible that the future is hopeless or hopeful, and you really don't know either one, why not choose hopeful? Because you really don't know. It could be either one, but choose hopeful and believe that there's something that can change. Excuse me, because hopelessness it's not real. It's not real. It's what your brain is telling you, based on incorrect information. I don't believe anyone is ever hopeless. And if you're feeling that way, then let me hold the hope for you until you feel it again.
I love that one, Jessica. Hopeless is not real. Let me hold it for you until you can own that. I love it. All right. Last two final questions. Give some advice, some insight to the girl dads, the father figures, the role models, the partners, the spouses of those who are dealing and experiencing pelvic pain, heavy periods, endometriosis, adenomyosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, maybe even some fertility issues. Give some insights on how they can be a part of this journey, this experience, and be supportive.
Oh my gosh, the number one thing would be, can I go to the doctor with you? Can I write a list for you of things that you want to ask? Can I be there to support you so that you don't get that white coat amnesia and forget everything you want to say and get intimidated?
I love it. All right. So if you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would y'all eat?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I know this is maybe silly because he's not really a historical figure, but I'd love to eat a meal with my dad and just relate to him one-on-one as an adult. And honestly, I wouldn't even care what we were eating.
Oh, I love it, Jessica. All right. Let everybody know where they can find you, connect with you.
Yes. So healingyourinnereater.com is where you can sign up to find out where my next workshops will be. I'm thinking about doing an online workshop. It's where you can get the Healing Your Inner Eater workbook. And you can use the discount code podcast in my online store, and it'll bring that price down on that workbook. And then my email address is jessica@jessicasetnick.com. And if you listened to this and thought, maybe I do want to talk to someone, even though that wouldn't be me, I can help you find someone like me in your area that you can talk to.
Yes, I absolutely love it. Thank you, Jessica. So, y'all, that has been an absolute amazing conversation. But I want to let you know that the empowered reset is not about willpower, it's about safety. So if you've been stuck in cycles of burnout, bloating, and surviving on autopilot, it is not your fault. It's your body's way of asking for a reset. In this free training, I'll walk you through the HEAL method, the same root-based framework I use to shift from inflammation and hormonal chaos into energy, clarity, and calm. This is where the noise ends and your healing begins. Check the show notes and register for the next upcoming training. Y'all, it's your Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach Jovonnie, host of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. I hope that you enjoyed this amazing episode with Jessica, got something out of it, but I really want you to know that you don't need more willpower. You need to feel safe around food and listen to your own story. Go own it. Thanks for vibing with me, y'all.